What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. It's time for my updated college football playoff predictions, and honestly, they haven't really changed, not much. The New Year's Six, though, has definitely changed, so we're going to combine all that here. You know, normally, last year, if you go back to the season, I would do a playoff prediction video, a New Year's Six prediction video every single week, and there was a lot of change going on throughout the season, but I've been pretty steady with my playoff predictions. But again, what has changed is the New Year's Six. Obviously, go back a couple of weeks, and things look a little bit different. So let's start with the playoff predictions. Again, I still think Georgia winds up at number 1. I think they go undefeated. I'm looking at Alabama, though, as a real challenger. I just don't know. I think Georgia, by the end of the season, is just going to be so much better than they are right now. They showed some potential against Kentucky, showed you what they're capable of. And I just think they're going to get better and better as the season goes along. I don't see Florida or Tennessee beating them. And right now, I still would take them over Alabama in the SEC Championship. I've still got Michigan at number 2. I still think they run the table. There will be a debate on maybe Michigan at number 1, Georgia at 2. But I think Georgia will have a decent resume. They get to play Ole Miss this year. That'll be a nice resume booster. You'll have Tennessee in there. Maybe Florida finishes ranked. And then, of course, finishing with Alabama. They're probably going to have a better game in their conference championship than Michigan, a better opponent, a better resume booster. So I think Georgia winds up at 1, Michigan 2. Wouldn't be shocked if that was flipped. And then I've got Florida State at number 3. I think the Noles are able to run the table. At this point, I just don't see who's going to beat them. Maybe someone trips them up. Maybe they lose to Duke or something. But either way, one loss, undefeated. I think they'll finish in the ACC championship game, and I think they'll win that. So I've got them there. And I've actually still got Texas at number 4. I know they just lost to Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma and Texas will meet again in the Big 12 championship, and I don't think anyone else is going to beat Texas, so I think they're sitting there with one loss. They get some revenge on Oklahoma. They win the Big 12 championship, and they get into the college football playoff. I just look at that game, and you look at the goal line stand for Oklahoma, the 3 turnovers for Texas. You know, all the big plays, all the big factors in that game went Oklahoma's way. I don't know if that's going to happen again, and I think the teams are pretty evenly matched. So I'm going to say Texas wins a rematch there. They win the Big 12 championship, and they get into the playoffs. So I've still got, again, the same 4 teams that I've had the last several weeks, but my New Year's Six predictions are a little bit different. Now in the Orange Bowl, I've got Louisville versus Alabama. So you've got to have an ACC team here. I'm looking at Louisville. I'm looking at North Carolina. Those seem to be the picks to be that number 2 team in the ACC. And you look at the schedules, Louisville has a much more favorable schedule than North Carolina. I think they're the safer pick. Very good chance this team goes at least 10-2 in the regular season. I think that's enough to get them there. And then Alabama on the other side. Looking at them now, I don't know that they lose another game in the regular season. But then, of course, having to play Georgia in the SEC Championship would keep them from making the college football playoff if they lose that game. And you get an SEC or a Big Ten team here. I think they match up Louisville and Alabama here in the Orange Bowl. Next up, we go to the Cotton Bowl, Oregon versus Ohio State. I'm looking at Oregon and Washington. I think they've kind of separated themselves in the Pac-12. Who winds up winning the Pac-12 championship? It may not really matter. I think both of those teams will make it into a New Year's Six bowl. And I'm starting to think maybe one of those teams is able to do it with one loss, and then we're really going to have a debate. Who gets in? A one-loss Texas, a one-loss Florida State, or a one-loss Oregon/Washington, whoever comes out of that. It's gonna be tough. And again, I'm starting to feel more and more. I think it's more and more likely that the Pac-12 is able to get one of those 2 teams in there with one loss, just because USC's not looking great, and I think those teams are definitely ahead of those other teams. But I mean, you look at the rest of the Pac-12: Oregon State, Utah, UCLA, Washington State. Those teams are all capable of pulling off an upset. So still, we might have everyone in the Pac-12 with at least 2 losses. And then I think Ohio State, right now, I'm going to pick them to beat Penn State because that game's at home, and then they lose to Michigan. So 11-1. But Penn State, definitely an interesting game there. And then also they play Wisconsin on the road. Wisconsin's looking better and better. But I think the Buckeyes at least get to 10-2. I'm going with 11-1 though, and I think that's enough to get them into the New Year's Six. And then we go to the Fiesta Bowl. So Washington, Oregon, just talked about them. I think those 2 teams will both go, I'm going to say 10-2 or 11-2 if you count conference championship games. Maybe they meet again in the Pac-12 championship. And then Oklahoma. So Oklahoma, I think that they're going to lose to Texas in the Big 12 championship. And maybe they trip up somewhere else. They've got Kansas on the road. They've got a sneaky West Virginia team. Wouldn't be shocked, though, if they go 12-0. But still, if you lose in the Big 12 championship game, I think that's probably going to keep Oklahoma out, especially because they're not going to have a very good resume. Big 12 really down this year. They didn't have a big non-conference game. But still, that's going to put them, I mean, we're talking 1 loss, maybe 2 losses. That's still going to, I think, put them ranked high enough up to make it to a New Year's Six Bowl. So Washington, Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, and then finally the Peach Bowl, Penn State and Tulane. I still think Penn State goes 10-2. That's enough to get them in, because now I've got USC possibly losing 3 games. So some teams that I did have up here, I've kind of dropped off. LSU, I've dropped off. And there's Tulane. You know, I've kind of forgotten about Tulane. Their only loss is to Ole Miss, and I didn't even consider them when doing my top 25 this week. But that was a loss to a pretty good team, and they played them tough without their starting quarterback. And you look at the rest of their schedule, I think they could probably win out. So I'm back to Tulane as that Group of 5 champion to make it into the New Year's Six. So Penn State, Tulane in the Peach Bowl. Those are my playoff predictions and New Year's Six predictions, and then we'll go through the rest of the playoff. Again, I've still got Georgia beating Texas. Should be a great game, I think, with all the time to prepare, though. Georgia will be ready to go. Their defense will play really well. It'll be enough for them to win a close one. And then I think Michigan, their physicality, their run game, they're able to control the game against Florida State, win another close game. I think Florida State and Texas both are capable of possibly winning those games and getting to the national championship. But I'm still going with Michigan. Since go back to the preseason, all season long to this point, I have been picking Michigan to win the national championship, and that is not something that I normally do. I normally kind of bounce around as we go through the season, but I've been consistent. I still feel like it's going to be Michigan. I really want to see them play a quality opponent so that I can feel good about this pick, because right now, just have not seen that. But again, no reason to go against that prediction. So I'm going Michigan over Georgia in the national championship. Now, those are my predictions. Give me your updated playoff predictions down in the comments below.